Noon. Is it the afternoon? It is. It's officially 1 o'clock, so it can be afternoon. So welcome back to our next session with a slight little name change in it. I think we decided it was a little more descriptive of what it'll be about. It's titled Empowering Public Knowledge and Preserving Heritage. And just a little bit of housekeeping. If you're here this morning, it's pretty much the same kinds of things. For this session, we'll be doing a Q&A feature. So you can submit questions there throughout the presentations. Your questions may be answered, but if not, we'll hold them to the end and set a few minutes aside for Q&A answers. There is an option to do your questions anonymously if you like, but also you'll see, as I can see you all are using the chat that is open. Feel free to interact with your colleagues around the state. We'd love to see chat, and we'll be keeping an eye on it as we go along as well. So today's session will be recorded, as it is already being recorded, and we'll put it up on slurp.info within the next few weeks. Closed captioning is also available. If you don't see it on your screen, tap live transcript and then show subtitles. And we also do, as you can see on the screen, ASL interpreters are joining us live throughout the session. Thanks, Kara, for your attendance today and help. And now moving on to introductions. I'm happy to introduce the next session, Empowering Public Knowledge and Preserving Heritage. This program really centers around two of the Pratt libraries in our role as the State Library Resource Center, Digital Maryland, and the State Publication Depository and Distribution Program, our State GovDocs program. Digital Maryland does a lot of different things, serves as a digital library, digitization program, basically project consultants for any number of projects across the state, providing wonderful access to the cultural heritage of the state of Maryland. And the government documents program, while we often think of it as it's just may at first think of it as a print program, but there has been, with the initiation of online access several years ago, it's really transformed the program into something new over the last number of years. And in this session, they'll take a look at ways their digital collections have helped community members kind of engage with the unique histories and cultures and preserving those stories and voices that might otherwise have been lost. And with that, I do want to do some introductions. We got three of our team members presenting today. I introduced first Tracy Thompson earlier this morning. She's the manager of the Digital Resources Department. And it was this morning more in line with the Sailor database project, but she manages all of digital resources, which includes Digital Maryland and the State Documents Program, as well as several other things. So as I said before, big job, and she's doing a fantastic job. She's also got an amazing team supporting her. Danielle Ford is the department's assistant manager, and she's manager and coordinator of the State Documents Program. And Megan Keene, the digital projects manager, who's been instrumental in taking Digital Maryland to new heights, increasing productivity, and keeping all of the myriad projects that we've got going on across the state really flowing smoothly. And with that fantastic team, I'll turn it over to you all. And Tracy, I think you are up first.
I am. All right, let me share what I have. Hi, everyone. Okay. Yeah, Michael, you framed it perfectly. We are going to talk about why Digital Maryland is such a cool resource. Today's theme is all about access. So we're going to give you examples of why it's important that these materials are made accessible. So Megan and Danielle are going to help me, and we're going to walk through what it is, where you can find it, what kinds of things are on there if you haven't been already. And then Megan, who is the real expert here on Digital Maryland, is going to tell you some of the more technical aspects about Digital Maryland, how materials make it to the platform. Danielle is going to give you some examples of government documents. I have a few from Digital Maryland, and then we'll wrap it up with a Q&A. And I'm really embarrassed because I totally forgot to put a photo credit on my first slide, but I'll add that so when it goes online, it'll be there. I just thought that was a cool picture of the neighborhood. And there we have the Pratt Library. So with this, I was going to tell you that Digital Maryland has been a thing since 2002. Funding for it is given to us by the State Library Resource Center. Used to have a different name. It was called Maryland Digital Cultural Heritage. So we shortened that to Digital Maryland, and I think we can all understand what that means. But it is not only historic artifacts, but cultural as well. So you will find some more modern collections on there. Like right now, Megan has been working on getting salt boxes from around the city photographed and metadata collected. She has to talk to artists to get permissions for that. So it's taking a little while, but it's coming. And that's just an example of a newer collection, a more modern cultural collection. Nothing else I want to tell you here. I'm going to turn it over to Danielle and let her tell you about our GovDocs programming. Danielle.
Thank you, Tracy. Once again, my name is Danielle Ford. I'm the Assistant Manager in the Digital Resources Department, and I'm also the coordinator for our Maryland State Publications Depository and Distribution Program, which was established in 1982. Some of our responsibilities include collecting and distributing publications from various Maryland state agencies, and we distribute them to our 14 depository participants, which include public, law, special, and special libraries across the state of Maryland. Next slide. So these are just a few of the state agencies that we collect our print publications from. And some of those publications include things like annual reports, audit reports, and newsletters. Next slide. So in 2010, we decided to harvest electronic publications to make them available to the public. And we use OCLC's Content DM to preserve those electronic publications. And currently we have a little over 30,000 publications in the repository. Next slide. So just an example of some of those publications that we have in our repository is this 1989 document from the Maryland Geological Society on dinosaurs in Maryland. So this could be a good document if someone wants to do research on dinosaurs or things like that. Next slide. And then this is a 1973 publication on the water quality in the Baltimore Inner Harbor. This can be useful to compare it to the water quality from the recent 2024 harvest flash that we had this past summer. So we have a lot of cool documents, a lot of documents that can be used for research purposes in our repository. So when you get a chance, please check it out. So I'm going to pass it back over to Tracy.
I'm back. Okay, so here it is. This is the platform. And today, if you could drop a link in the chat, just in case someone hasn't been to Digital Maryland before and wants to bookmark it so they can visit it frequently and see all the cool collections that are there. I noticed about Digital Maryland that the Wikipedia article, we have a Wikipedia article, says we only have 40 collections. That's a little dated. We have 166 collections. So if there are any Wikipedia editors out there, you could go on and fix that for us. We add 1 to 3 collections a month. So new collections are published. Sometimes it's none, sometimes it's 4, 1 to 3 is an average. And we're generally adding to several collections each month as well. So some of them are ongoing projects. We have, how many people? We have 5 people in our department, or 6 if you count Danielle, the assistant manager. So we have Megan, who you'll meet in a minute. She's the project manager. We have recently hired a scanning technician who scans all day long. That's Eugene. You'll see his map in a minute. And then we have hired Kim, who does metadata for us all day long. And Bill has been working here part-time for many years, working on the Maryland department photos. You'll see those coming up. I think there's 30,000, maybe 40,000 photos. So he's got a big job to do. That team is also currently working on both a diversity audit and I guess you call it a geographical audit. So I'll show you the map right here. Eugene made this. So this shows where collections are located all over the state. And today, if you could drop that link in there, I think I made it public. If not, I'll be sure to get it to everyone that's here. You can click on all the points that he placed here, and it'll pop up with a screenshot of an item from the collection and an explanation and a link to the collection itself, which I think is pretty fun to look at. You can see that he highlighted, we're missing 3 counties. So if anyone is from Dorchester, Kent, or Cecil County, and you have any good ideas for us for collections, let us know, and we can get you added to Digital Maryland and to our map. We also have some, I think 1 collection that's in Pennsylvania and 1 that is in DC. And the collections contain, as it says there, directories, diaries, minutes, photographs, letters, oral histories, and much more. We have video now too. And I'm going to let Megan tell you more about the technical aspects. So Megan, are you here?
Hello. Hey, everyone. I'm Megan Keene, the Digital Projects Manager for Digital Maryland. As you can see here on the slide is our scanning tech lab featuring the same scan master that's behind me. You can see Kim there in the background doing metadata. And really this back room of a back room is where all of the magic happens. The Digital Maryland process is really broad depending on what the partner needs. So working from anyone from institutions like the Baltimore Museum of Art to private individual collectors, we'll talk to them about what's relevant for research and narrow down their scope, since a lot of these places have a huge wealth of materials that they want to get online. We help them figure out a scope that's a lot more manageable. And then we talk to them to figure out what exactly they need in order to get their materials accessible online on digitalmaryland.org. So that can be anything from managing to pick up the actual items, such as some that are in this box to the left here, and doing scanning for them, to providing training on our digital asset management system, Content DM, to also just crosswalking metadata and doing bulk uploads. So really there's a whole variety of processes that go on back here, and it varies depending on the institution and what they need. We also can provide access to From the Page, which is a volunteer transcription platform, and also file storage for our large scale scans that these amazing scanners produce, which I'll talk a bit about now. Next slide, please. This here is the Scan Master. The one pictured is the baby version of the big one behind me. This is really the workhorse scanner back here. We liked the big one so much that we got this second one so that we can up production. But as you can see, it has 2 adjustable halves of the bed. So it's really adjustable for books, ledgers, photographs, prints, anything that can fit on the bed, really. So this smaller one, I believe, is 24 by 24 inches. But the bigger Scan Master is, I think, 4 foot by 4 foot. And that's great for things like maps, blueprints, large-scale newspapers, which I'm actually going to talk about later in this presentation. So super versatile, super fast, really one of our most used machines back here. Next slide. This is the WideTech Art Scanner, which has a 3-foot by 6-foot scanning bed that rolls underneath the white box that you can see above the table, which is actually where the camera head is housed. So instead of your typical flatbed scanner, where that white light and camera will move over the top of the document, in this case, the bed rolls underneath the camera. And this one is perfect for artwork because of the high color profile and resolution it can capture, as well as, of course, the scale, and also its capability to capture some 3-dimensional elements, such as the embossment on the metal that you see on the right. So on the left here is a bunch of etchings from the artist Alice Webb, whose artistic collection we're working on getting online as we speak. So that should be available next month or so. And the ArtTech scanner has done such a good job of capturing the different tones in her grayscale prints, as well as the watercolor. Next slide, please. Once we get the images scanned or we receive the files, we work on the metadata, which is really the most time-consuming and important part of the digital collection, other than the image, of course. But the metadata is what allows these items to be discoverable. So that includes the title, the authors or creators, subject headings, dates, and a description. So all of that we require most of the time to come from the actual institution, since they probably know more about their items than we do. And then we clean it up to some standards and publish it through Content TM onto Digital Maryland. Our collections are available for patrons to download the 300 DPI resolution file from our handy download button that is featured on most of our collections. And if anyone needs the high quality, nice production quality print, then or scan, then they'll email us and we'll go through kind of what their usage is on a case-by-case basis. Our items are also harvested through WorldCat and DPLA. Here you can see on the right is how the Maryland Rainbow History oral history collections look on Digital Maryland. And on the left at the top is one of the interviews featured along other LGBTQ and queer resources from around Baltimore that have pulled up through WorldCat. So we get people, accessibility is really the huge thing that Digital Maryland strives for, knowing that there's so much material in institutions and collections that might not have the resources, budget, or equipment in order to get their own things online. That's the whole mission of Digital Maryland. So I'm going to pass it back over to Tracy to talk more about the accessibility and some of the research that has come out of these collections.
Thank you, Megan. So why does it matter? I guess I figured there are 3 main categories of this. The first is accessibility. People that can't get into museums and libraries, having these collections available to them for whatever reason. Maybe they're across the globe, maybe they're homebound, for whatever reason, having them available online is a big deal. So we're very happy to provide that to people. Education. It's good to have these materials online for students, obviously. Some of them allow for some interactive learning, continuous learning for others. And we would like to think that they're getting integrated into curriculum in some of our school systems. Preservation is the last big category. So saving these items from further deterioration, giving research opportunities to people that can use this to get a greater understanding of a topic. Those are all reasons why access is important. And there are 3 examples here of items from the collection. All right, so now we're going to get into the fun part with examples from Digital Maryland. I found out that there are about 60 requests per year for items from Digital Maryland, and most of those go through a Google form that is placed on Digital Maryland website. It's also linked to a form that's on the Pratt website. Those requests come in, and as Megan said, sometimes people want to know if they can use the item to have some artwork for their office or their hotel, or they're someone doing research and they want to include it in their research, or they're making a movie and they want to put some item in their documentary movie. Books, that's another common one. I was looking through the list recently. Actually, Showtime, the network, called and asked about putting an image of the 900 block of Druid Hill Avenue in Baltimore. And they didn't say why, but they said they were making a documentary. I don't know if it's still in the works or it got dropped, but the documentary was on Thurgood Marshall, and that happened to be the block that he was raised in. So I thought that was kind of cool. Here we go. This is Chicory. So what is Chicory? Chicory is a magazine that was started by someone at the Pratt, and they had city students contribute creative works. They could be stories, poetry, drawings. In 1966, it was started by a local poet called Sam Cornish, and he worked in collaboration with the library and community action neighborhood centers to publish this magazine. And it was published from 1966 to 1983. And the Pratt kept all the paper copies. So it was discovered by a professor at Rutgers Newark History Department, Mary Rizzo, and she asked if we could digitize it so that she could use it in the classes she was teaching at her university. And since then, other people have discovered it, and there's been a little bit of Chicory revitalization going on. There were summer programs this summer, workshops for young people in Baltimore on writing and creative, I don't know, outlets of all types, and they actually accessed Chicory through Digital Maryland, which was great because they could kind of get their hands and eyes on these materials without having to go down in the vaults and get the paper copies and have them further deteriorating. So that's a pretty cool example of an item in Digital Maryland that's being used. This one, the Baltimore Streetcar Museum, there's a collection of images from around Baltimore that were taken of the building of the streetcars. So all types of intersections, the power lines. We digitized this collection in collaboration with the Baltimore Streetcar Museum. And I got an email, it was right after I started here, from somebody who was super interested in high-res copies of the images that we had online. So he wanted the full-size renderings, and he was vision impaired and was working on a website where he had a map, and he was trying to match all of these old photos with places on the map, and was very grateful that I could get these to him. He's still working on his website. I said, you have to send it to me when you are finished. So that's another example. And I'm gonna go back to Danielle. Oh no, going back to Megan. No, I'm gonna keep talking about Maryland photos, sorry. All right, these are the photos that we were talking about earlier. There are 40,000 of these photos from all around Baltimore that were donated to the Pratt, and we have someone who is slowly working on, some of them have a little bit of information on the back, an identifier number, but not a lot. So we're adding to that, and it's a collaborative project happening between the Maryland Department and Digital Maryland. We are only on the Cs. They're organized alphabetically, but we are slowly working through them. And that's what they look like in the vertical files. There's an example of one online. And here's one that, again, I found this in the Google form where people submit requests to use a photo or to view the large size image. And this is one that someone wanted. They were doing, they were researching the history of pet cemeteries. And Maryland has one of the oldest, I think the second oldest pet cemetery in the country. And this gravestone for Napoleon, the weather prophet, is still there, but it's actually missing the photo. And this person went on Digital Maryland and was very pleased to find that we have the only image that includes the photo. So if you looked up Napoleon, the weather prophet on Google right now, you would find images of the gravestone, but you wouldn't find the actual photo of the cat there. So I thought that was pretty cool. And he was called the weather prophet because he had certain behaviors when it was about to rain. I think it got so out of hand that it was even reported in the Baltimore Sun that the drought was going to end because Napoleon was signaling it. All right, and then this last one, the Works Progress Administration. This one, actually I put a link here. So there's this website, the Architecture of the Negro Traveler's Green Book is a pretty cool website, and it has the whole East Coast and a map, and it has links to all these places that were listed in the Green Book. One of those places is in Baltimore, and this image that they have on their website, they've given credit to Digital Maryland, so they used it there, and this is actually right down the street from the Pratt Library. And I think if you look it up, the businessman who owned this site also was involved in getting Carroll Park Golf Course opened or desegregated so that everyone could play golf there back pre-civil rights. So I thought that was another neat example of a Digital Maryland item. And now I'm going back to Megan. She's going to talk about historic.
Yes, the Howard County Historic Newspaper Collection has been going for a few months now, and it's kind of my baby, so I like talking about it. The Howard County Historical Society in Ellicott City has the Ellicott City Times, Howard County Progress, as seen here, and especially the Ellicott City Times, running back as far as the 1850s. So it's the longest and most complete run of these publications in one location. And the archivist there, Lauren, noticed that these specific newspapers were not available elsewhere online. And given their condition and age, she didn't really want them to be handled by the public. So we were very eager and happy to help her digitize these newspapers to get them online, because members of the Historical Society were wanting to reference them, but they were so fragile and almost one of a kind that we really wanted to get them online. And since then, there have been a bunch of local research questions that have been answered by referencing these newspapers digitally. For example, there were some jailbreaks that were confirmed, such as one by John Ingalls, which was an advertisement for a $400 reward for his capture, as well as other news articles or snippets about escaped or runaway enslaved people through the county. But there have also been questions such as those from the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Museum, also in Ellicott City, which was putting together an exhibit and used the Howard County newspapers to verify locations and a timetable to figure out who the general manager was of the railroad station at the time. So a lot of interesting different uses of these newspapers. Next slide, please. That would not have been possible without Digital Maryland because of the condition of some of these newspapers, as you can see here. And these are large scale newspapers that were done on the big Scan Master, because each of these pages, I would say, are probably about, I would want to say like at least like 2 foot wide a page. So it's the really big ones. And being in this condition, it would be easy to rip and tear them. So getting this awesome historical information online, which bumps our numbers and their usage numbers, is just one of the really great examples of Digital Maryland collections. So thank you for letting me talk about it.
Great. Thank you, Megan. All right, well, we are wrapping up early, but we can talk about some of the challenges and some of the solutions that we think about over here at Digital Maryland. Technology is a challenge. So making sure we talk about what are the next things that we need. Do we need film scanners? Do we need a 3D scanner so that we can scan objects? But then do the platforms that we use have the capability to hold these objects? So we think about what direction we want to go in the future, and make sure that anything new that we are adding or considering is compatible with Content DM, which is our platform, but then also compatible with DPLA and WorldCat. Another challenge that we run into is storage. We pay per byte of storage, and we are constantly having to rearrange where our storage is used and consider buying more storage. So that is another challenge that we think about often. Discoverability. So we need to make sure that we're following strict standards when we're adding metadata and making it so that people can access these items easily as they search for them online. Usability. So that we're talking about features like we added a download feature. I think Megan had it up briefly. If you noticed, some of the collections have a little download button, so users can freely download the item and use it and give credit in whatever presentation they are working on. Not all of the collections we've been able to get rights to do that with, but we're working on that. So we have 166 collections to go through. Adding contacts for and licensing questions. These collections have been up for a number of years, and some of the contacts that are on the collections are no longer working. So staying in touch with partners and making sure we can talk to someone at the various partner institutions and enable the public to use these materials that are put online. Digital literacy, I added this one in. I think it's important to have a little bit of training and maybe offer some resources to help users navigate and utilize these archives. So to understand what they can use, where they can use it, and maybe answer some questions for them before they have to go send us an email. So that's something we think about. And then community engagement. So this is a big one on our list. And I think the more we can do this, the more will help with some of these challenges. So that means engaging more with educational institutions, academic, and maybe even public institutions as well, highlighting some of the things like we did today, showing them what is there and what could, showing them what is there so they can think about what else could be added there, maybe making new partners that way. Well, and I'll make a final plug to have all the libraries in Maryland add links to Digital Maryland on their website. So that would increase our community engagement as well, as if all these local libraries could advertise us that way. So that is all I have. We have time for Q&A.
Hey, Tracy.
Anyone?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
got a couple of questions
Okay.
coming in here. One, let's see if I can get this right. The first one here, you must get many requests from groups. How do you prioritize all of the requests?
Yeah, so I said we were doing audits already, so we see what current collections we have. And if we have something similar, then you're gonna fall down the list, as far as priorities. We also see how much work it's gonna be. So if a partner contacts us and they are ready to do half the workload, so if they can do the scanning or if they can do the metadata, that affects where you fall in the to-do list. Also the scope of the project. So if it's already been weeded so that it's not overwhelming and it's not, 6 different angles of the same building within the collection, that helps. And then the diversity audit, which is ongoing. So I think that's going to have a big impact because we really are, there are holes that we're looking to plug, as far as diversity in Digital Maryland. So if someone reached out and had an idea for one of those things that we're missing, that would go to the top of the list. Megan, do you want to add anything there? You might have more to add. You've been here longer.
Sure. Yeah, it is, as you said, kind of prioritizing what is new and filling in gaps on the platform, but also saying that we can usually accommodate anyone as long as they work with us on maybe timeframes or the scale of their projects. So sometimes it can be a bit of a back and forth to kind of make things manageable, but most of the time, we'll get to almost everyone at some point. It's just a matter of time and scale. So.
And I know with the map, the map you just showed too. I mean, one of the things I know you've talked about, it's like we've got things scattered all across the state, but there are, it's like there are sort of, I guess, geographical areas that we're trying to focus on as well. So that's another a way we can kind of look into different areas and prioritize things. Thank you. Let's see. Cynthia from BCPL asks, does the collection include any Maryland historic phone directories or street directories? If not, will you ever be able to scan those?
I don't think it currently does contain any directories, and I'm wondering, so part of the question before I forgot to say is if it already exists online, then we wouldn't probably want to publish it. So I don't know if those are online, but that would be my first thing to go see if it's online already. That would be a lot of work, Megan. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree. I know that the Maryland Department of the Enoch Pratt does have some of the very old ones, like back in the 19th century. But as Tracy was saying, things that are already online, especially certain newspapers, we don't want to digitize because the scanners that I showed, and as you can see, they are for quality over quantity. So we are not a production scanning facility. So in doing things like phone books could be quite difficult because of how thick they are. But it's definitely the kind of demographic and information that's historically relevant. We would just be thorough in figuring out if they're available elsewhere first before getting them up online. But that's interesting suggestion. Thank you.
And well, and you get to kind of see the process as your brains are working through all of the different questions.
Yeah.
Because it does at first, it's like it sounds like it's a really interesting resource. And I was like, well, it is a great question.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then it's like it's cycling through. It's like whether if it's phone numbers and addresses and how old is it and privacy and then and like there's
Yeah.
just a string of workings that the team goes through for every project. And it's an interesting process.
Some of our new ideas for partners that we're really excited about, and they kind of give you a sense of how we're looking for things that are manageable because we have so many people. We really don't need to be reaching out to anyone else except for the fact that we have these holes geographically and diversity wise, but there are a lot of people that are reaching out to us. But some of the newer ones, the Baltimore Zoo or the Maryland Zoo, I guess it is now, that one seemed exciting because they said they had a very small collection. So we're like that might be a priority if we can make this happen. We're meeting with them next week. What was the other one? I was just thinking of Megan. The race cars. So a collector of pamphlets of auto races, like from the 1920s to the 1950s around Baltimore. This person reached out to us. He's done all the work. So he's done all the scanning and all the metadata, and he's getting that to us. And it's unique. It's not a big collection, but I think that some people will be really interested in it. So that's the kind of thing that we'll say, sure, we'll go ahead and publish that for you.
Yeah. And it's so funny. I know that there's always we want to do more outreach and get the word about Digital Maryland to as many schools and places as possible. But we stay pretty busy just with people contacting us and us going from there. So it's always something coming in, always something new. And it's really interesting and exciting to see what people have kept and what we can get up online for people. So.
And I do see someone dropped in chat. There is a sizable collection of the Baltimore directories. Sounds like physically up in Towson. But yeah, and we've got a lot of directories here in the Maryland department. And I think it's a really interesting project. Let's see, and a couple more things came up. And so, I mean, looking at those newspapers that for Howard County, I mean, one of the things I think might be interesting is how do you really manage scanning something in that bad a shape? Because lots of things are in, they're decent in levels of fragility, but that was like, whoa, those folks.
I know.
So how does that work?
With a very delicate touch. It's some of it is doing a puzzle, so putting the puzzle pieces of the pages back together. Lauren is very good about separating things by page if they're in multiple pieces. But there does become a point where I've had to say this one is just in too bad a shape to even try and put back together. Luckily enough, the flatbeds are pressure sensitive, so we never have to worry about any spines of books getting crushed. But it does require a fine touch, yes, perfect emojis, of just how we have to lay everything out on the bed. And then, of course, the dreaded task of flipping the page and then putting everything back together again. For some things that are really big, we can also do some editing in Photoshop to kind of stitch multiple scans or photographs back together. But we like to do things in as big a scan as possible, to do as little retouch and keep things as faithful to the object as possible. But yeah, those were very tricky, and even just handling them to scan them, you know, inevitably things would crumble and get torn. So I can only imagine how much damage we've saved them from by getting them up online instead of having patrons look through them.
Very cool. Yeah, because I know in some of the collections in the past, different equipment is useful in different areas. Because with the Black
Yes.
Lives Matter posters, you talk a
Mhm.
little bit about like those were in a different kind of delicate situation,
Mhm.
how you all kind of manage that.
Yes. Yes, the Black Lives posters were hanging up outside the Washington memorial fence. Tracy, I don't know if you want to pull up anything related to that. No pressure.
Mm.
But they were hanging outside of the fence in Washington, D.C. during the Black Lives Matter protests. And because they had been hanging outside, they were covered in a fine layer of grit and dirt, and also had things such as like packing tape or duct tape or other things kind of sticking up on them, which we did not want to put through the Scan Masters because it would touch the glass and possibly scratch something, get stuck, and leave residue. So putting things through the actual flatbed scanner stopped it from getting sticky or touched. I see a comment in a question in the comments. Have we ever scanned microfilm? So Digital Maryland, not microfilm. We're currently hoping to get a film scanner to do things such as like Maryland Department Photos has a bunch of film negatives. But for microfilm, we would go through an outside vendor, which the periodicals actually uses at Enoch Pratt. So not microfilm, but film negatives are on the list of something that's very interesting and we want to get, just because they're at the age now where things are starting to deteriorate, and it's quite a conservation issue to want to get these things online too. Same for audio and visual film, but we have unfortunately no capability to digitize that ourselves. We can host it on Digital Maryland, but we don't have any film scanners for that, unfortunately.
Well, and that makes me think of one other question too, is that there are a lot of different ways that Digital Maryland sort of supports projects and partners. Sometimes it's scanning, sometimes it's other things. Can you all talk a little bit about the different ways in which it's not a one size fits all. It's always a little bit of something, and depending on what they have and what they need.
Sure, Tracy, do you want to take this?
I'll you're the expert, Megan. I'm gonna let you do it. You've been running the show for a year.
Yes, well, almost 3 years now. Almost
Yeah.
3. So yeah, so I mean, it can be anything from things need to be scanned, obviously. Sometimes places come to us with images and metadata, and we just help import it into our platform. We sometimes host things such as oral histories and interviews through embedded links on Digital Maryland so that we can pull up a media player. And other collections such as the WJZ news footage archives actually link back out to another archives. And in that case, that would be the Mid-Atlantic Moving Image Archive. So we can do anything to support them, such as like hosting stuff to crosswalking stuff. But again, we do try and limit these projects to things that are not available elsewhere, and are specifically Maryland related. That really helps narrow down the huge breadth of things that could possibly come our way.
Very, very cool. And I think one last question, put you all on the spot. Do you have, maybe more for Megan, but do you have a favorite thing you've ever scanned, or a weirdest thing you've ever scanned, or something along those lines?
My favorite has to be the Saunders Kramer lantern slides. which is concept art from the 70s of manned orbital spacecrafts and also moon buggies. So it's very like Star Trek, Trekkie origins
Very
art.
cool.
Super interesting and colorful, and hopefully we're going to get some big prints of it to put up on the walls in here. Like we'll be looking out into space, like we're in the space station or something.
Very cool. And what was the name of that collection again?
Saunders B. Kramer with a
Maybe we can
K.
drop that in the chat at some point.
Thank you.
Very, very cool. Well, thank you all. Thank you, and Danielle, thank you all for an awesome presentation and learn a lot more about Digital Maryland and the documents program, all the ways that you know, they provide digital access and support for a lot of different kinds of collections and communities around around the state. Thank you all again. And let's see. And as far as finishing up housekeeping, we'll thank you all for coming and attending our last session of the day. ADA Title II Digital Accessibility for Libraries will be at 3 o'clock, and we will see you all then. Thanks. Have a good rest.
Thank
Well,
you.
until an hour or so until see you all again.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.